Hey there YouTube, this is cflfanatic. I know this is a little unorthodox. I know I usually don't get in front of the camera to do my videos, and I know that I usually only upload a video once a week, but I just got through watching the Toronto-Winnipeg game, last regular season game at Canada Stadium, and I just felt like I needed to make a couple comments, particularly on the big thing that happened in the game that everybody's talking about, the late hit on Jyles that knocked him unconscious for a second there. So I guess I start off by saying I'm a little bit upset that that there was actually hesitation with this call, because it was originally called it was originally a major foul, unnecessary roughness, which is a 15-yard penalty, which anybody who watches the hit, that goes way beyond, where you would even think to call unnecessary roughness for that. You're in a whole different territory here. So the fact that that was the original call kind of bothered me. He did eventually end up getting ejected, thank goodness, but it took longer than it really should have, and it really concerned me. There were also a lot of time issues with the clock. I would like to take the moment to point out to Bombers fans who are probably confused about the clock not being reset to 1:36, as Glenn Suter suggested that it should be. Now, the Argos kicked their field goal to go ahead 27-22. When the field goal was kicked, there was 1:36 left. Winnipeg got the ball and then ran a play that took 9 seconds off. So the clock should not have been reset to 1:36. It should have been reset to 1:27, which it originally was. So the Bombers did not lose any time on the clock, despite what Suter said, despite what people were thinking. The Bombers did not lose any time. The Bombers were not conned out of any time. The clock should have started at 1:27, and that is where it eventually started. Now, the Bombers were a little confused. They did lose about 5 seconds before they snapped the ball. Now, that can be accounted to the referee, but ultimately, it's not like a situation where earlier in the season where Toronto was having to stop Edmonton 1,000,000,001 times because they kept saying that these 4-second plays only lasted 1 second, and there was still time on the clock, and an array of other bullshit like that. So yeah, just clearing that up. Anyways, back to the hit. The reasonable penalty that I think is Johnny Sears should be suspended for the rest of the season, including the playoffs, next week and the rest of the playoffs. And if I were Paul LaPolice, I would say, look, I don't care what the league is doing. You're sitting on the bench for the rest of the season. You can sit on the bench and watch your teammates play the last game. You can sit on the bench, watch your teammates play in the playoffs. You can sit on the bench and watch your team win a Grey Cup, because that kind of behavior is not acceptable in the slightest. And ultimately, there are so many things wrong with the hit that happened, and there were 3 different things that Sears did that were completely illegal. First of all, Jyles is sliding down, and don't even start by trying to say that he didn't give enough notice that he was sliding. There was plenty of notice that Jyles was going to be hook sliding feet first, taking himself down out of the play. So there's the first problem, but you still deliver the hit. Second problem is that you can see him clearly. He's got his head bent like this. He's delivering a hit with his helmet, which is illegal in anything. You're not supposed to lead with a helmet, even on a basic hit, especially when it's a late one against a quarterback. So that was incorrect. And third, and this is the big one, he aimed for Jyles' head. Now, you can watch this as many times as you want, and I don't know how you can possibly suggest that he was aiming for anything other than Jyles' head. He bent his head over, and he rammed it right into the center of Jyles' face mask. You know, you can't say he's trying to aim somewhere else, because it's just not true. You know, he had ample time to slow up, and instead he lowers his head and plows it. And if you saw the hit, it's vicious. Like, if you see it in slow motion, when you're seeing it from the top angle, granted, it doesn't look too bad. Then when you get up into the zoom, though, you can see the helmet-to-helmet collision, and you can actually see Jyles' head, you know, slam off the turf, and you can see his neck, you know, whip like that. And the second that you do something like that, you're no longer playing football. You're setting out to hurt someone. And that's essentially what he did. You know, this isn't excusable. This is not excusable in, you know, in anything, you know, and football is no exception. Yeah, football is a violent sport. People are going to get hurt. Tackling and, you know, potentially inadvertently injuring someone is part of the game. But when you set out, you know, I'm not sure if he was necessarily setting out to injure Jyles, but he was setting out to make a hit when he shouldn't have been setting out to make a hit, because Jyles was clearly down. He was leading with his helmet with the hit too. So, you know, an ejection from the game, I'm sorry, but that's not enough. Not based on what the officials have stated. I mean, in week 4, the Argos, I forget who it was, but someone made a very late hit on Buck Pierce. Knocked him just flat onto the ground. He had ample time to stop, and he just came in and delivered a hit. It wasn't a headshot, but he came in and threw his entire body into Pierce's and knocked him on the ground, and the officials flagged him and ejected him from the game. Fine, that's perfectly acceptable. You know, that kind of hit has no place in football. It's not appropriate, and it's completely, you know, unnecessarily violent. And if you're going to eject him, fine. But you need to be consistent. And this hit on Jyles was 10 times worse, because not only are you doing it while he's hook sliding, while he's on the turf, while he's most vulnerable, but you're leading with your head, and you're specifically attacking his head. So this is 10 times worse. So if you're going to call that hit that happened on Pierce several months back, if you're going to call that an ejection from the game, then you have to call this a suspension from the rest of the season. You know, they specifically said they're setting out to say, they're trying to deliver a message that these kinds of late hits on quarterbacks this year are not going to be acceptable. So you have to send the message by saying that this hit is not legal, and nor will it be accepted. And if you're going to continue to do this, you can expect, you know, serious repercussions for those actions. And that's ultimately what the league needs to do now. It's the night after, so I'm not expecting, you know, anything immediate, but, you know, within the next couple days, I would like to see a statement. I would like to see the league, I would like to see the league, you know, condemn him for what he did, and ultimately deal out a reasonable punishment. At least suspended for the next couple of weeks, at least. I don't really see any other punishment that you can make. So other than that, I just want to make a quick note about officials too, because I know that the ejection was eventually called, but let's do a what-if scenario, because originally the call was unnecessary roughness. That was the call that Murray Clark made, and if he had not been swayed, and if he had not eventually caved and made the ejection call, then Sears would have still been allowed to play in the game. And that's where I think we need to start bringing in fines for officials. Because if a player and a coach can get fined for complaining about an official, then officials need to be fined too. Because, you know, players and coaches get fined for criticizing officials, but, you know, the reality of it is sometimes officials don't do their job. You know, I understand it's a hard job. I get it. You know, like, it's a thankless job, you know, because every call you make, you could make 20 calls in a game, and all of them could be 100% correct. And on every single one of those calls, even if they're completely right, you're going to have a handful of people who are telling you that you're an idiot, that you don't know what you're talking about, who disagree with your call, you know, So yeah, it's a thankless job, and it's a difficult job. Having said that, it's a job nonetheless. You were chosen to do this job, and I'm sorry, but you can't whine about how difficult it is. It's your job, and you're supposed to do it. And if you can't handle it, if you can't do the job, if it's too difficult for you, then you shouldn't be doing it. Then you should quit. And that's why I think if you can find players and coaches for criticizing an official's calls, then you should be able to fine an official if it's reviewed and found out that the official completely dropped the ball and made the wrong call. And especially in something like this, because if he had gotten just a 15-yarder and come back into the game, then you really need to fine those officials. Because if you miss a call like that, you're allowing somebody who's just made a hit that could not just potentially end a career. When you're talking about a head-to-head hit that snaps back necks like that, you're talking about potentially killing someone. That's not an over-exaggeration. That's a head-to-head shot. That's snapping the neck back. That is how players get killed. And when you allow a player to get off, relatively easy for that and bring them back into the game, you're not just missing that call, you're also jeopardizing the safety of every single one of those players on the field. And if you're going to do that, then I say, okay, well, we'll see how you feel. You're going to be that lenient to players who make brutal, vicious hits like that. We'll take $10,000 out of your wallet, and we'll see how lenient you are after that. There's no nice way to say it. So, yeah. Anyways, I know this is unorthodox, and I'm sure not a whole lot of people watch this, but, like I said, I just needed to voice my opinion, needed to say what needed to be said, because, I'm still in shock that hit happened, because it's unacceptable, completely uncalled for, and Johnny Sears, shame on you. Absolutely disgusting, play on your part, and you should be very, very ashamed of yourself. So, yeah, I think that's about it. So I ended up getting the game wrong. It's Toronto won. So I'm 0-1 so far this week. So we'll see how I do for the rest of the week. Anyways, that's about it for me. So I'll see you next week.